Section 722 of the Bankruptcy Code allows a consumer to redeem their vehicle for its fair market value.
Well, let's start with the basics.
If you owe $20,000 on your vehicle and it's only worth $10,000, you can redeem more.
Welcome back to Law Unpacked, where we break down complex legal issues to help you understand your rights and options. I'm your host, Sean DeVries. Today we have a fascinating topic for anyone navigating Chapter 7 bankruptcy. 722 redemption funding. Joining us is Stephen Elmer, lead counsel for 722 redemption funding. He is an expert in helping people redeem their vehicles at a fair value. Welcome, Stephen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for having me. I'm happy to speak about the redemption process and how my company works and what we can do to help consumers with their automobiles.
Well, excellent. Well, just to tell our consumers a little bit about your background, you were a debtor's attorney for a while, right? Before you decided to go into the redemption side.
Correct. Yes. I was a bankruptcy attorney for a couple of years at a high filing bankruptcy firm. So I represented consumers and had worked with 722. So I saw kind of firsthand how 722 worked and helped consumers as well. And I've been in-house counsel for around 13 years now.
13 years with 722.
Yes, correct.
That's great. I had no idea that they were even around that long, being such a big part of the bankruptcy process, but not a lot of bankruptcy attorneys use that process.
That's correct. Yeah, we've been around for close to 35 years at this point, and it is a unique kind of program. We are the only company out there that provides funding for clients to redeem. And there are a lot of attorneys who work, throughout the country, and a lot of attorneys do know us. They might use us once and kind of not have the situation arise, or they use this pretty regularly. So both big and small, I think we come in handy.
Well, let's start with the basics, Stephen. What exactly is 722 redemption, and how does it apply to people going through Chapter 7 bankruptcy?
So Section 722 of the Bankruptcy Code allows a consumer to redeem their vehicle for its fair market value. If you owed, or a personal property item for that matter. Of course, today I'm speaking about vehicles because that's what we offer. But if you owe $20,000 on your vehicle and it's only worth $10,000, you can redeem or keep your vehicle for that $10,000 under Section 722 of the Bankruptcy Code. Catch is you have to have that lump sum ready to go. So situation is client files bankruptcy. They owe $20,000. Their car's worth $10,000. They can keep it for that $10,000, discharge the rest of the negative equity in the bankruptcy, but they have to be able to pay that $10,000 to their current lender, and that's where a company like my 722 comes in involved in the process.
Well, that's a great overview. And just in a nutshell, what you're allowing people to do is to keep their essential property, like a car, but at a reasonable cost after a bankruptcy.
Correct.
Well, why do people need 722 redemption in the first place?
Well, most people, and how 722 came about is, when consumers file bankruptcy, they usually don't have $10,000 sitting around or extra cash sitting around to pay that lump sum necessary to use Section 722 of the Bankruptcy Code. So around 35 years ago, a local attorney here in Cincinnati, where we're based, came up with the idea, partnered with some banks, and came up with the idea to provide the funds for a consumer to redeem their vehicle. So, you file the bankruptcy, you need to have $10,000 in order to keep the car for its fair market value. How are you going to do that? You have to borrow the money, and that's where we come in, is we provide that lump sum to help the consumer. And I can explain how that works because it has to benefit the consumer as well, but I don't want to get too far ahead.
No worries. And just to make it understandable, at what type of situation would someone want this type of loan?
Basically, if a client's underwater or cross-collateralized on their vehicle, so by underwater, they owe more than what the car's worth. The car's depreciated for one reason or another, or maybe they rolled in negative equity when they purchased the vehicle, or cross-collateralized. So if the consumer has a loan with a credit union, they might think they owe $5,000 on the vehicle, but because they have a personal loan with the credit union is going to say, no, you owe $15,000. So in some scenario or some situation, they've just ended up owing more on the vehicle than what its fair market value is. And over the last couple of years, what we've seen is our car prices have been through the roof. Rates have gone up. There have been longer terms on vehicles. So it has become really difficult for consumers to stay above ground on their vehicle. There are a lot more facing underwater situations.
And when you talk about underwater or negative equity, really what you're saying is, or one hypothetical that could happen is somebody goes and trades in their car and they put that value of that vehicle that they traded in onto their new loan. And now that loan could be upside down. Is that accurate?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I mean, it's clear that this can happen to a lot of people, especially after financial hardships leading up to bankruptcy.
Right. Yeah. Yes. And I think more so, obviously, in the interest rates they were facing going into the bankruptcy, coupled with the high prices of the vehicles at the time. And now the vehicle prices are starting to come down. And if they, we've seen terms on vehicles go for 6-7 years on 60,000 mile vehicles. So you're never going to build equity in it.
And most people in Chapter 7 hear about reaffirmation agreements when they want to keep their car. Can you explain the difference between a reaffirmation and a redemption, and when someone might choose one or the other?
Absolutely. So reaffirmation, basically, you're keeping the vehicle as is. So if you owe 20 months at $500 a month, whatever your remaining term is in your payment, you're reaffirming on that debt. So you're keeping your car loan as it currently sits. Redemption, it's based on the value of the vehicle. So if the vehicle's worth less than what you would pay over the life of the loan, if you were to reaffirm on it, keep it as is. So if it's worth less than that, then you can redeem the vehicle under Section 722. And so what our company does is we'll do a comparison of the reaffirmation versus the redemption. And we have to both match or shorten the remaining term on the vehicle if they were to reaffirm, and lower the monthly payment. So by any mathematical calculation, for us to offer our services, there has to be a savings to redeem the vehicle versus reaffirm on the vehicle. So we have to be able to cut enough negative equity, save the client money that way. Otherwise, we will not offer our services.
So redemption can actually save people, a lot of money, especially if their car's value has dropped significantly.
Exactly. And we'll do that comparison at no cost to the consumer. There's no obligation. We'll look at their current loan. We'll see what the value of the vehicle is and see if a redemption makes sense. And we'll do that. We'll provide that comparison.
And looking at this as a practical side, and we mentioned your company, they do finance. So if someone doesn't have the outright money to pay, how does your company come into play?
Basically, it's a very simple process from the consumer's perspective. They call us or visit our website. It's 2 or 3 minutes for them to apply. If we make that determination that a redemption will save money versus a reaffirmation, they'll get approved for that. It takes within 24 hours of them contacting us. And then we will provide the valuation on the vehicle that's needed for a motion to redeem with the bankruptcy court. We'll provide that. We'll provide everything that's needed in order to file a motion to redeem and get an order granting it. And then once the order comes down granting the redemption, say it's for $10,000, the consumer will have a new loan through one of our lenders for that $10,000. Again, it still we do that comparison, the redemption versus the reaffirmation. So that new loan still has to save the client money versus reaffirming. and then a check goes to the old lender for their amount, say it's $10,000, and then they're paid off and all that negative equity disappears.
Now, you mentioned that it's a motion that allows this to happen. Explain that a little bit more for us.
Yeah. Again, it's a standard form motion. They're not complicated. We've been doing this for 35 years or close to that. So we have the forms. We know what they look like in the different jurisdictions. It's very basic. It just explains that client is redeeming their vehicle for the value of what it's worth. And you have to start with a retail valuation for a redemption. So Kelley Blue Book, NADA, Edmunds, retail starting point. But then you take into account the retail cost of repairs. So has the car been smoked in? Is the windshield cracked? All those kinds of things. And you deduct that to get an accurate value of what could a retail merchant charge for the vehicle as it sits in its current condition. So without marking it up at all. And we provide that valuation. So you file the motion that explains, you're redeeming the vehicle, you're going to pay off the old lender, it's fair market value. Here's what the fair market value is.
Well, I mean, that's a huge relief for people who need their car but might not have that cash on hand really to do this, and they're upside down. So reaffirmation may not really have that that benefit that a redemption would.
Exactly. And I hope I'm not getting too bogged down in the weeds, because it is a very simple process. I explain it to attorneys all the time. I mean, we see people file these motions pro se too. I do recommend an attorney, but they're not complicated matters. It's relatively straightforward. Again, we've been doing this for a while, so we know what's required in every jurisdiction. And we only offer our services if it will save the client money to redeem versus reaffirm or retain and pay.
I want to go real quick, and you talked about the vehicle value and how you deduct certain expenses. How do you come to that number? Is it redeemers send in pictures? Do they just state what their car is? How are you able to provide that information to get that number?
That's a great question. So we'll pull the retail starting point, the Kelley Blue Book, NADA, whatever it might be, and then we'll talk to the consumer and conduct a phone interview with them. Sometimes we do request pictures, but we create something called our vehicle condition report. So it uses that retail starting point, and then we'll talk to the client. Okay, tires. When was the last time your tires were changed? Brakes changed? Do you smoke in the car? We know kind of relatively standard deductions for those in various jurisdictions. So we'll use those to deduct from that retail starting point and create this vehicle condition report. And we've used that throughout the country without issue. But that gives a more accurate value of just starting at the retail value, because that really doesn't take into account what individual issues or what individual problems the vehicle has.
Well, and what happens if a lender objects to that value? Say they think it's worth, what they're owed on it, not what the current fair market value is.
And that does happen. So, and from my both personal experience being a bankruptcy attorney and also working in-house, 99.9% of those you can resolve through simple negotiation. So what happens? You file the motion saying the car's worth 10. They object saying it's worth 15. What they're going to do with that is base it off that full retail. So they're going to claim the car's in great shape. They've always had the oil change. They've never smoked in it, whatever. But we know that's not true. But typically, so you started at 10, they objected, said 15. 99.9% of the time we build in some wiggle room. So maybe we can go up to 12,000, still saves the client money. Creditor gets a little bit more, resolves it that way. So just through a simple, couple emails with the creditor's attorney, you can usually resolve it. We can also provide the auction value of the car. We have Mannheim reports, so we can pull what that vehicle would sell for at the local auction in that jurisdiction. And that shows the creditor, if you want to object, if you really want to fight this, you're going to get a lot less than the redemption value because the client can turn around and surrender the vehicle. So this makes sense, economic sense for you too, to just accept the redemption value. So we can arm the attorney or whoever with the right data. And again, you can usually just offer a little bit higher money and the creditor's willing to accept it.
That's great, and I think that's really useful. I can tell you, in my own experience, the first one that I did have a creditor that objected, and we were able to get it resolved pretty easily.
And that's what I see in practice. It's hardly ever do these go to hearings because it's not worth the cost to anybody involved.
Well, speaking of hearings and the cost, obviously you're loaning money, and not everyone can qualify for a redemption. So can you walk me through your eligibility requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. For the vehicle, it has to be under 150,000 miles and less than 10 years old. For the individual consumer, they have to have at least $2,800 of gross monthly income, less than 3 bankruptcies, less than 3 repossessions, stability at jobs, stability. They haven't moved around a lot, stability in residency. Those are typical guidelines to look for. Again, though, there is no cost or obligation for us to make a determination. So as long as the vehicle is less than 150,000 miles, less than 10 years old, consumer makes at least $2,800 of gross monthly income, it's probably worth us taking a look at it to see if we can help. But those are some of the big ones. I don't know if I mentioned repossessions too. Less than 3 repossessions. That's a big one. How the consumer has paid on the vehicle in the past. Our lenders really look at that. But everybody we work with is in a bankruptcy, so that's no surprise, and that's who our lenders work with. So.
Well, I mean, I think that's great information. It's good to know these up front to avoid any surprises when starting the process. So what are the key benefits of 722 redemption compared to other options like reaffirming or even surrendering the vehicle?
Surrender. So reaffirmation, obviously they're keeping the vehicle, keeping the loan as is. And we'll tell the client if we can't help them, we'll say, if you like your car, you want to keep it, you're not underwater enough or you're not underwater at all. So we can't help in this situation. We won't say go reaffirm. We'll say we just can't help in this situation. You can talk to your attorney. We don't provide legal advice, but we'll let the client know whether redemption is beneficial versus where they're currently at. If they want to surrender their vehicle, they're fine to do that. Redemption's nice because they keep their known vehicle. They're paying less on it than what they were paying before. If they want to get rid of it 6 months after redeeming it, they're free to do that. They're not underwater anymore. There's no prepayment penalties or anything like that. So they can always trade it in. They can always sell it. They can move on from it. Additionally, if they were to surrender it and purchase a vehicle, there's going to be sales tax involved. And not to mention all the stuff dealerships like to add on and charge the consumer. There's none of that with a redemption. It's all relatively straightforward. It's just one number and keeping the vehicle that they know and trust, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always a big thing is they have to want that vehicle, right? If a consumer doesn't want that vehicle, it doesn't make sense to reaffirm it or redeem it.
Right, exactly.
But it definitely sounds like redemption can offer both immediate and long-term financial relief, which can be a game changer for many of our clients.
Yes, and our lenders do report to the credit bureaus as well, so they can help rebuild credit that way after redeeming through us.
So let's switch gears just for a little bit, and let's talk about some common misconceptions. What are the biggest misconceptions or myths that you hear about redemption?
I would say a lot of people get hung up on interest rates because, the interest rate might be higher through redemption. They'll range anywhere from 12% to 23.99. But even if that interest rate's higher, it still has to save the client money versus reaffirmation or retain and pay on the vehicle. So people tend to get a little hung up on that. but it's all simple math in the end. We'll look at the reaffirmation. This is and the redemption, and we have to both lower the monthly payment and match or shorten the remaining term on the vehicle. So by any mathematical calculation, our redemption has to save the client money versus reaffirming on the vehicle. So I would say that might be one. It's just the math has to make sense in the end. It's black and white, and if we can help, then we offer our services. But I would say maybe that might be one of the biggest questions I get from attorneys anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can definitely, I could see where that would prevent some people from exploring this as an option and where it really could help them. So thank you for clearing some of that up. Now, I know you've helped many people. Do you have an idea of how many people have gone through your company?
That's a good question, and I used to have a stat. I know we've cut over several $100 million worth of negative equity since we've been doing this for so long. So I know, and our if you Google us, I know our reviews are close to five star or whatever, or the highest star you can get. And I think one thing there too, I always like to mention this because I think it's important, is we don't market to consumers. We rely on attorney referrals. So I think that kind of sets us apart too. If we weren't helping the client, if we weren't providing a benefit, people wouldn't send us their clients because, they're, what would the point be? So if we weren't providing benefit, we wouldn't exist basically. Since, I think you've seen this, we've all seen this. Day one after filing a bankruptcy, a consumer gets bombarded with all types of credit offers. That's not what we do. That's not who we are. We rely on that attorney word of mouth. We always say we almost have two clients. We have the client that we want to help, and then we want to keep the attorney happy because the client, they can't file bankruptcy that often. We're not going to see them again, hopefully ever. It's the attorney, though, that's going to keep referring us people. So we want to keep them happy, too. So I think we kind of stand apart. I mean, we have great reviews. Our name, we're kind of the Pepsi Cola in this industry. We're the only ones that do this. And I think we do it well. And we've been doing it for a long time. Awesome.
How about a few real life stories, people that have had successes?
Few real life stories. I will say, so at one point we were tied solely to U.S. Bank, and they told us we were one of their most successful programs, and the fact that people don't default on these loans. It's very low percent. Oftentimes it's like, oh, you work in for a company that provides loans to people in bankruptcy. They think, oh, that's got to be a messy market. It's not. People are happy because they're keeping their vehicle. They're paying less on it. Oftentimes, consumers pay their vehicle off quick or early because they're used to a higher payment. Well, now they're getting a lower payment and a shorter term, so they can pay their car off quicker. Just the other day, we received a nice thank you card in the mail, which it's kind of nice to see cards still because that doesn't happen a lot. I mean, most people don't might write a review online, which is awesome, but it is nice to actually get a note from somebody that
kind of a lost art.
Yeah, it is. So it's very nice. So, but we do have examples that we provide where it shows, again, the numbers are easy. This is what they were paying before. This is how much we saved the consumer. And those are just easy examples. I mean, we try and send them out actually weekly that shows, last week we saved this client $10,000. And those are actual cases where just, every week we're doing that, and we can provide those samples that show that, or examples that show that.
Well, it's definitely always encouraging to hear how these legal options positively affect people's lives. And to be able to save somebody $10,000 when they're trying to rebuild their life, rebuild their credit, they've gone through this financial trouble, is definitely a huge, huge step.
Absolutely. And That's, another guy I work with here. He says that quite a bit. When we're interviewing people and stuff like that, that is one of the nice things about working here is you do actually see firsthand that you are helping people. It does make a big difference. Just something so small as cutting a car payment by say it's $50 a month or whatever, it makes a difference. Plus you're, shortening the term maybe 5 months. So in the end, they are going to save several thousands of dollars. And that was one of the reasons why I was happy to come as in-house counsel here.
Well, we talked earlier about how maybe not everybody will qualify for redemption. What are some common mistakes or pitfalls people should watch out for during the process?
I would say one of them is it's always kind of interesting when we talk to clients on the phone and we're going through that vehicle condition report I mentioned where we're asking them problems with the car. It almost seems counterintuitive to the consumer. They don't want to say, oh, this car's got this wrong, this problem, this issue. So they don't always want to disclose that because they're, wanting to get a loan on their vehicle. No, they need to tell us if there is an issue with the car. That way we can get a good, proper valuation of the vehicle. And our staff's pretty good at talking to clients and getting them to open up about the car because we do need to know if there's something wrong. It helps. It benefits the consumer to be honest with us about the car. The other thing I would say is just pay attention. If something's needed, be timely about it if you can, because there are deadlines. You have 45 days within the 341, 45 days from the 341 hearing to file the motion to redeem. So there are, deadlines that you have to meet. So if you're slow with stuff, it can just delay the process longer or potentially make it where you can't file a motion to redeem. You could be time barred.
Right. That's important. Let's talk numbers for a moment. What kind of financial impact can 722 redemption have on someone's overall bankruptcy process? And how does it help them recover?
Well, a couple of ways. As I kind of mentioned earlier, we're lowering the monthly payment and we're cutting the remaining term on the vehicle. So, maybe they had 40 months left if they were going to reaffirm on it. We might be able to get that down to 35 months and save, say, $30 a month or $50 a month on their payment. So they're going to have extra money in their pocket, both month to month, and then it's also going to cut that remaining term. Additionally, as I mentioned, if they want to trade in the car, they're free to do that. They're not underwater on it anymore. And our lenders do report to the credit bureaus. So they're rebuilding credit that way. And we've seen this too, where clients, after a year, they can qualify for they can lower their interest rate on it after 12 on-time payments. So they can save additional funds that way. Or if they want to, sometimes they can get a better interest rate or a better, if they go to, a credit union or a bank out there and refinance it, they're free to do that as well. Because they've rebuilt their credit by making on-time payments. But yeah, month to month, they're lowering their payment, and then they're also cutting a huge chunk off or cutting several months off at the end of the loan too.
And so that was something that I didn't realize. So they can actually come back to 722 redemption after 12 monthly on-time monthly payments and apply for a lower interest rate.
Correct.
That's great. That's really great. So how do you work with bankruptcy attorneys to facilitate the redemption process?
I would say 95% of the consumers who reach us are through bankruptcy referrals, bankruptcy attorney referrals. The other 5% might find us through Google. So most of the clients that reach us are referred to us by an attorney. And once the client's referred to us, we'll value the vehicle. We'll make a determination if we can help. And if we can help, we'll send the attorney everything he or she needs to file the motion to redeem. We'll have the valuations, as I discussed, sample motions to redeem. Now, they're in PDF format, and they're, as I said, we work nationwide, so they're not specific to the jurisdiction. But upon request, we can provide the attorney client and jurisdictional specific motion in Word format. at no cost. So we can give the attorney everything they need to file the motion to redeem. If it's their first time filing a motion to redeem, we can shoot over examples as well as dockets to review examples to see of how they were filed. But basically, like I said, we've been in this business so long. We have the forms. We know the different jurisdictions. We know the different notices that are required. We can give the attorney everything they need. So, and then once they file the motion to redeem, if there is an objection, we also know how to handle that too. So we can help the attorney through that process. And those are usually, like I said, relatively simple, straightforward, just valuation matters, and simple negotiation should resolve it.
And what should someone look for in an attorney to help with a 722 redemption?
That's a good question. I would say somebody who is invested in the fact that they're not looking just to file the case and move on. They want to help the client. We have we work with firms, big, small, stuff like that, but ones that are willing to, because, the attorney does have to file a motion to redeem. That is a contested matter. So it is a little extra work. It's not a ton. They are very straightforward, and we can help. So somebody, an attorney that's actually willing to take that extra step, and the attorney can get attorney's fees through the process too. As I mentioned, these are contested matters. So an attorney can charge their client a fee for it. Our lenders allow up to $700 for the attorney's fees for their work. And that's very straightforward. It's fully disclosed up front to the consumer. It's put in a separate trust account on the client's behalf. And once the redemption order comes down granting the motion, a check goes to the old lender for their amount, and then a check goes to the attorney for up to $700 for their attorney's fees. So it's a nice, easy way for the attorney to make money, to help their client save money, and then also make money as well.
Well, one thing we've definitely learned, it's really all about having the right legal support can make all the difference, especially in some complicated cases and in cases where, debtors can really be helped above and beyond your typical Chapter 7 filing.
Absolutely. And like I said, we rely on those attorney referrals. So our goal is to kind of educate the attorneys out there that maybe aren't aware of us. And there's no cost or obligation to the consumer to see if we can help. So it's as easy as just a phone call or visiting our website. We're not salespeople. We'll explain what we do and if we can help or if we can help.
Well, lastly, Stephen, what's your advice for someone considering a 722 redemption? How should they get started, and what can they expect?
That's a great question. I would have them either call us at our 800 number, 888-721-2800, or visit our website, 722redemption.com. And on our website, there's actually a debtor's section on there, and it has a bunch of information that can explain the process, what's expected from them, what's needed from them. But it's all relatively straightforward. I think that the best method would be to call our 800 number, talk to a representative here. Again, it's 2 or 3 minutes of the consumer's time. We'll explain, we'll talk about the vehicle, and we'll make a determination if their vehicle would qualify before moving on any further to see if the consumer would qualify too. I would recommend they go to our website. There's a tab on the top, again, for consumers. I think it's labeled debtors, but it has, frequently asked questions, kind of the A to Z requirements of what's needed from them. And it's not a ton of work. It's very, very straightforward again.
Well, thanks again, Stephen, for joining us today. This was incredibly informative, and I'm sure our listeners are now have a much better understanding of what a 722 redemption is. And to our listeners and those watching, thank you for tuning in to Law Unpacked. We'll be back soon with more valuable insights to help you navigate the legal landscape. Take care, and we'll see you next time.